I created the travel software that made my wife's dad $400 million. Then he cheated me and replaced me. I never imagined that a few lines of code, something I wrote in my tiny home office at 3 a.m, would be the foundation of a $400 million empire. An empire I had no claim to. I wasn't born into wealth. I didn't grow up with family connections or an easy path. Everything I had, I built myself. I was the guy who stayed up all night learning programming while my friends were out drinking. I was the guy who took freelance coding gigs just to make ends meet. And when I met her, I thought I had finally found something real. Samantha wasn't just beautiful. She was sharp, ambitious, and fiercely loyal. Or at least, that's what I believed. I still remember the night she told me about her father's failing travel agency, Whitmore Travel. Gregory Whitmore was on the verge of bankruptcy. Their family name was respected in the industry, but respect didn't pay the bills. They needed a miracle, and I was foolish enough to provide it. I designed an intelligent, AI-driven booking and logistics software that didn't just fix their company's issues, it revolutionized how travel businesses operated. My software streamlined everything: customer bookings, predictive pricing, real-time flight adjustments, and exclusive corporate partnerships. In a single year, Whitmore Travel went from near bankruptcy to a multi-million-dollar empire. I should have been celebrated. I should have been part of it. But success doesn't just bring fortune. It brings power shifts, and power shifts expose true intentions. Gregory always made it clear I wasn't one of them. "You're just a tech guy," he would say, waving off my contributions as if I hadn't just saved his family's legacy. But Samantha was different. She stood by me at first. When the business was taking off, when the money started pouring in, she looked at me like I was the most brilliant man in the world. We were a team. Then came the first change. At industry events, I noticed she started introducing me differently. "This is Noah, my husband," instead of "This is Noah, the mind behind Whitmore Travel's success." It was subtle, but I felt it. Then came the second change. Gregory started hiring more executives, businessmen with long resumes and perfect smiles. The meetings I used to lead started happening without me. Decisions were made without my input. Samantha assured me it was just business strategy, that they were expanding in ways that didn't concern me. I believed her. Then came the final change. His name was Daniel King. The first time I met him was at a Whitmore Travel gala. I shook his hand, thinking he was just another corporate hire. He smiled at me like I was nothing. That should have been my first warning. But the real betrayal came 1 year after I built their empire. I found out Samantha was engaged to him, not dating, not thinking about leaving me, engaged. We were still married. I had built her family's fortune, only to be pushed out like I was irrelevant. And the worst part? I never saw it coming. I had spent so much time working, building, and making sure they succeeded that I didn't notice I was being replaced. The final blow came at a family dinner I didn't even want to go to, but Samantha insisted. "It'll be good for us," she had said, "and you should hear the big plans we have." I thought maybe this was it. Maybe I was finally getting the respect I deserved. I was so wrong. Gregory stood up, glass raised, smiling like a proud king. "As we take Whitmore Travel into its next era," he announced, "said I'm proud to introduce our new CEO, Daniel King." I froze. My mind couldn't process it fast enough. I turned to Samantha. She didn't even look at me. The company I built, the empire I created, it was handed to another man, a man who had done nothing. The table erupted in applause, smiles, cheers, handshakes, like I had never existed. I couldn't breathe. I forced myself to stand. "What the hell is this?" My voice cracked, but I pushed forward. Gregory didn't even have the decency to act surprised. He chuckled, reaching into his wallet and pulling out a crisp $100 bill. He held it up between his fingers and tossed it at me like I was a beggar. "This is your actual value, Noah," he said. "Take it and move on." The world blurred. The humiliation was like a dagger in my chest. I looked at Samantha one last time. "You knew." Still, she wouldn't meet my eyes. That silence was my answer. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just left. But as I walked out that door, one thought burned in my mind. They had no idea what was coming. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from inside the Whitmore mansion still rang in my ears. They were celebrating my humiliation. My chest felt hollow, as if I had been gutted from the inside. I had built that empire, given them everything, and they had tossed me aside like scrap metal. And the worst part? Samantha never even looked at me. How long had she known? Had she been planning this with them all along? Was there ever a moment of hesitation? Did she ever feel guilty? I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think rationally. If I reacted out of anger, I'd give them exactly what they wanted, a desperate, defeated fool begging for scraps. No, I wasn't begging. But I needed to understand how this happened, the Whitmore family's game. Looking back, I realized the Whitmore family had never truly accepted me. At first it was subtle. Little micro-rejections masked as offhand comments. Gregory would joke, "So work with computers all day, what do you know about real business?" Martha, his wife, would smile, always polite, always quiet, but her eyes said enough. She saw everything. She knew what they were doing. And Samantha, she had been my biggest supporter until the money changed everything. Success exposed who they really were. The first major contract we landed, an exclusive partnership with Elite Travel Concierge Services, was the turning point. I remember the way Gregory looked at me when we signed that deal. He shook my hand, forced a smile, but his eyes said, "This kid is a threat." The moment Whitmore Travel became too successful, the moment it went from a struggling family business to a dominant powerhouse, was the moment I became disposable. They didn't need me anymore, or at least that's what they thought. A seat at the table, but never a place. The worst part of it all wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the way they did it. They let me sit at their table, let me build their fortune, let me think I was part of their success story, just to replace me when it suited them. When I was designing their software, I spent sleepless nights ensuring everything was seamless, integrating partnerships, optimizing cost efficiency, and structuring contracts that would guarantee Whitmore Travel's expansion for decades. Gregory never understood the power of what I had built. And now Daniel King sat in the chair I had earned. I had seen the way he smirked at me during that dinner. He had done nothing to deserve that position. Yet Gregory handed him everything on a silver platter. Samantha, she had chosen him. Why? Was it the money, the status, or had I become invisible to her? No, it wasn't just about money, it was power. Gregory wanted someone he could control, and I was never that person. I had built something too powerful, and that terrified him, so he took it from me. Daniel, the man who took my life. I clenched my jaw as I thought about Daniel King. Who was he? Where had he even come from? He wasn't just some random guy. Gregory had been grooming him for months, slowly shifting my role onto his shoulders without me realizing it. At business meetings, I started noticing small changes. Daniel started answering questions meant for me. He was given access to private company documents. He attended meetings with investors, meetings I wasn't invited to. And then, Samantha. I had been too busy working to notice she had been moving on right in front of me. The business trips, the late nights, the sudden change in how she spoke about me to others. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. But the truth was worse. She had already chosen him. The family dinner that destroyed me. Sitting at the dinner table that night, I had felt so out of place, like an unwanted guest at my own funeral. Gregory raised his glass. As we take Whitmore Travel into its next era, I'm proud to introduce our new CEO, Daniel King. I thought I misheard him. The world tilted. The sounds around me faded. The air felt too thick. Daniel smiled like he had won some grand prize, as if he had earned this. My gaze snapped to Samantha. She wouldn't even look at me. I had never felt more alone in my life. Then Gregory reached into his wallet, pulled out a $100 bill, and tossed it at me. "This is your actual value, Noah. Take it and move on." Laughter, applause, celebration. They weren't just replacing me, they were humiliating me. I don't even remember how I got out of there. All I remember was the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the drive that changed everything. I stared at my own reflection in the car's rearview mirror. For the first time in my life, I saw myself clearly. I wasn't Noah, the tech genius who built an empire. I wasn't the devoted husband who sacrificed everything for love. I was a fool who had given his enemies the tools to destroy him. I could hear Gregory's voice in my head. Numbers on a screen don't build an empire. He thought my software was just numbers. He thought I was nothing more than a tool. He was wrong, so very wrong. Because what Gregory had never cared to understand, what Samantha and Daniel had failed to recognize, was that the entire Whitmore Travel empire was built on one thing, my software. And as I sat there in that car, something inside me shifted. I had spent years making sure that every contract, every software agreement, every licensing deal was airtight. Gregory had ignored all the fine print. He had never bothered to read the details, but I had. I pulled out my phone, opened my laptop, and started digging through the files. Then I found it, one clause, one single clause. I stared at the words on my screen. Whitmore Travel's entire digital infrastructure, including the software that ran its billion-dollar operations, wasn't actually owned by Whitmore Travel. It was licensed. And I owned it. My heart pounded in my chest. I had spent years believing I was powerless, that I was just a guy who got used. But this wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of my revenge. I exhaled slowly, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, with a calmness I hadn't felt in weeks, I typed the email that would change everything. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every second that passed felt like a countdown to the moment they would lose everything. The moment they would wake up and realize that the empire they stole from me was built on borrowed land, and I was about to take it back. Sitting at my desk, the glow of my laptop screen illuminated the dark room. The air was thick with the scent of coffee, the only thing keeping me awake. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I reread the email for the 10th time. To Gregory Whitmore, Daniel King, Whitmore Travel Executive Board Subject, Termination of Software Licensing Agreement. I had outlined it all in precise legal language. Whitmore Travel's entire infrastructure, the booking system, the client management software, the predictive AI, the partnerships algorithm, all of it was built on my software. The licensing agreement expired at midnight. There would be no renewal. As of 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Whitmore Travel would have no access to its digital operations, no extensions, no second chances. I hovered over the send button, taking one last deep breath. This wasn't in anger. This wasn't some reckless emotional move. This was justice. I clicked send. Then I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. It's done. The moment felt almost anticlimactic. No fireworks, no applause, just a quiet email sailing through cyberspace, an email that would burn an empire to the ground. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The morning they lost everything, I woke up at exactly 8:45 in the morning. Not because I set an alarm, but because my body knew. By 9 o'clock, Whitmore Travel would be in freefall. I took my time getting ready, choosing a dark navy suit, the same one I had worn to my last investor meeting at Whitmore Travel, the meeting where I had unknowingly presented strategies that Daniel King would later take credit for. Not today. I walked out of my apartment feeling lighter than I had in months. By the time I reached the Whitmore Travel headquarters, chaos had already begun. The collapse begins. The first thing I noticed when I walked into the lobby was the sheer panic. Phones rang off the hook. Employees whispered frantically, their eyes darting toward the executive offices. A receptionist was in tears, staring at her computer screen like it had personally betrayed her. I walked past them, heading straight for the boardroom. Inside, the war had already begun. Gregory was shouting into his phone, his face red with frustration. Daniel stood beside him, furiously typing on his laptop. Samantha was there too, sitting at the long conference table, her arms crossed tightly. She looked afraid. "Try again," Gregory barked at someone over the phone. "Fix it, damn it!" "It's not a glitch," Daniel snapped, rubbing his temple. "It's a system-wide shutdown. Our entire backend is offline." "And why the hell is that?" Gregory demanded. Daniel hesitated. He knew why. That's when I stepped into the room. The moment they realized the truth, all heads turned toward me. Silence fell. Gregory narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here?" I smirked. "Oh, I just came to check on my software." Daniel stiffened. Samantha sucked in a breath. She knew what was coming. Gregory scoffed. "Oh, software? We own the entire system now." I chuckled. "Do you?" I leaned forward, resting my hands on the conference table. "Because from where I'm standing, Whitmore Travel doesn't own anything." I pulled a single sheet of paper from my jacket pocket and slid it across the table. It was a copy of the original licensing agreement. Gregory snatched it up, scanning the text, his face drained of color. "You never bought it," I said, my voice calm. "You licensed it. And as of midnight, that license is expired." Gregory slammed the paper onto the table. "You son of a—" "Careful," I interrupted, tilting my head. "It's not wise to insult the only person who can fix your mess." Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in their heads. Daniel, the golden boy, the hand-picked replacement, was staring at the floor. He looked like a man who had just realized he was drowning. Samantha was gripping the armrests of her chair like she might collapse. And Gregory, he was still too proud to admit the truth. "Do you think this little stunt will ruin us?" he sneered. "We'll rebuild." I laughed, actually laughed. "So rebuild? Without a functional system? Without your partners? Do you even know what's happening outside this boardroom?" I gestured toward the windows. Whitmore Travel's entire client database was inaccessible. Every partner contract was frozen. All bookings, cancellations, and travel plans were in limbo. No one trusted a company with no infrastructure. This wasn't just a hiccup. It was an extinction-level event. Gregory opened his mouth to argue, but his phone rang. I watched as he answered, listened, and then slumped into his chair. Another client gone. Another deal lost. Whitmore Travel was dead. Samantha's plea. Samantha finally spoke, her voice soft, almost fragile. "Noah, please, you don't have to do this." I turned to her, surprised. "Undo what? Destroy us." Her voice cracked. "You've made your point." "Destroy you? Me?" I leaned in closer. "Samantha, I didn't destroy anything. I just let go." Her eyes shone with something I couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe fear. It didn't matter anymore. I had spent years thinking I needed her family's approval. Now I realized they needed me, and I didn't need them at all. The final blow. Gregory finally looked at me. "What do you want?" he asked. The desperation in his voice was delicious. I smiled. "I already have it." He frowned. "What?" I gestured to the room. "This, watching you realize that you made the biggest mistake of your life. That's all I needed." Then I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I paused, glancing over my shoulder. "Oh, and Greg?" I pulled something from my pocket, the $100 bill he threw at me during that dinner. I walked back to the table, placed it in front of him, and smirked. "This is your actual value." Then I walked out, leaving them to drown in the ruins of their greed. I didn't drive straight home. I needed time to process what had just happened, to let it all sink in. I had done it. Gregory, Samantha, Daniel, the entire Whitmore empire, they were finished. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a finger in rage. I didn't need to. They destroyed themselves the moment they underestimated me. I pulled into a quiet parking lot by the waterfront, the city skyline glowing across the river. The wind had a bite to it, cutting through my jacket, but I barely felt it. My mind was too alive, still buzzing from everything that had unfolded. For the first time in months, I wasn't the man standing in the shadows, waiting to be acknowledged. I was the man who had just burned down an empire and walked away smiling. And yet, there was no overwhelming joy, no euphoria, just silence. I leaned against my car, watching the water ripple under the dim glow of the streetlights. The city was still moving, oblivious to the chaos I had unleashed just an hour ago. Whitmore Travel was dead. I should have felt more, but I didn't. I just felt empty. The cost of betrayal. For years, I had poured everything into that company, my time, my ideas, my expertise. Not for money, though the money was great. Not for status, though I had earned it. I did it because I believed in them. I believed in Samantha. I believed I was building a future for us. I wasn't some naive kid who thought love alone could sustain a marriage, but I thought respect could. Loyalty, trust. And yet Samantha had thrown it all away for a man with a better suit and a last name her father approved of. Daniel King. He was the polished version of me, the guy Gregory could parade around as his ideal son-in-law. And Samantha, she had gone along with it. When had it started? How long had she been planning this? Had she ever felt even a moment of guilt? I closed my eyes, letting the cold night air sting my skin as I tried to push those thoughts away. I couldn't afford to dwell on her anymore. She had made her choice, and now she had lost. The reality of power. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. Unknown number. I knew who it was before I even answered. "Hello, Greg." A long silence, then a sigh. "Sigh when?" Gregory's voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual arrogance. I smirked. "I know. More silence then. Let's meet." I chuckled. Why? No, why? He didn't have to say it. Gregory Whitmore had spent his life controlling people. He had built an entire business on making sure no one was more powerful than him. And now, he had to swallow his pride and come to me for help. I should have let him drown, but something about this moment felt too perfect. I glanced at my watch. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, my office. Another pause, then a reluctant, "Fine." He hung up. I put my phone away, shaking my head. Tomorrow, I was going to watch a king beg for mercy. The longest night of my life. I tried to sleep. I couldn't. Not because I was anxious, not because I was unsure of what came next. It was because my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I sat on my couch, a half-empty glass of whiskey in my hand, staring at the wall. Everything I had worked for was gone. Not just the company, not just the marriage, the life I thought I had. I had spent years chasing a future that didn't exist. I had been a ghost in my own story. But now I was the one writing the ending. I opened my laptop and pulled up the contracts, the ownership agreements, and every single legal clause Gregory had ignored. There was one thing left to do, something that would make sure Whitmore Travel never recovered. My fingers moved quickly, sending one final email, not to Gregory, not to Samantha, but to every investor, every client, every partner that had once trusted Whitmore Travel. I laid it all out, the truth about their downfall, the legal expiration of their software rights, and, most importantly, the launch of my new company, Carter Global Solutions. By the time Gregory and I sat down tomorrow, it would already be too late. I shut my laptop, took the last sip of whiskey, and finally, I slept. The morning after the fall, I arrived at my new office at exactly 9:45 in the morning. It wasn't some massive skyscraper with my name on it, not yet. It was a quiet, sleek penthouse space downtown, small but mine. Gregory was already waiting in the conference room when I walked in. The man who once mocked me, who tossed a $100 bill at me like I was a joke, was now a shell of himself. His eyes were sunken, his usual confident smirk replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. I sat down across from him, resting my hands on the table. "Oh, talk," he exhaled, rubbing his temples. You've made your point. I know you didn't have to do this." I tilted my head. "Didn't I? And you could have just walked away," he muttered. I laughed, a deep, genuine laugh. "You mean like how you expected me to?" He didn't answer. "So I did walk away, Greg," I continued. "So, you just never expected that I was walking away with everything." Silence, then the final plea. "Oh, what do you want?" So there it was, the moment of surrender. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Oh, I already have it." His brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" I reached into my pocket, pulling out the same $100 bill he had thrown at me that night. I slid it across the table toward him. "This," I said, smirking, "this is your actual value." Gregory stared at the bill, his hands trembling as he picked it up, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. I stood, adjusting my jacket. "You built your life around power, Greg, around controlling people. But here's the thing about power, you only have it until someone stronger decides to take it." I turned to leave. Before I walked out, I glanced back one last time. Gregory was still sitting there, still staring at the bill, as if he couldn't believe this was how his story ended. I walked out, stepping into the morning sunlight, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. No burden, no expectations, no one waiting to take advantage of me. Whitmore Travel was gone. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of the city waking up outside. I had spent so many years working, building, proving myself, only to be discarded like I was nothing. But today I was the man who took everything back. I reached for my phone and checked my emails. As expected, chaos was still unfolding. Dozens of unread messages, calls from unfamiliar numbers. The subject lines alone told me everything I needed to know. Urgent Whitmore Travel facing backlash from investors. Media request. Did you shut down Whitmore Travel? CEOs seeking alternative solutions, interested in a meeting? I smirked. The industry was already shifting. I got out of bed, stretched, and made my way to the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the air as I poured myself a cup, watching the morning news play on my tablet. There it was, breaking news. Whitmore Travel crumbles after software licensing disaster. Gregory's face appeared on the screen, his expression tight with frustration as he gave a statement outside the Whitmore Travel headquarters. "This is nothing but a temporary setback. We are working diligently to restore operations and assure our clients that Whitmore Travel will continue to provide the highest level of service." I chuckled. Lies. There was no fixing this. Their infrastructure was gone, their reputation shattered, and without my software, Whitmore Travel was nothing more than an outdated, dysfunctional travel agency trying to survive in a digital world. They weren't surviving. They were dying, and the world was watching it happen in real time. I turned off the tablet and finished my coffee. It was time to make my next move. The power shift. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I was in my new office, a sleek penthouse space overlooking the city. Carter Global Solutions, my company, my future, and unlike Whitmore Travel, this was built entirely on my terms. No one to undermine me, no one to steal my ideas. I sat at my desk, scrolling through my calendar. Meetings were already lining up, a Fortune 500 company interested in integrating my software into their corporate travel division. An investment firm offering to back my expansion, a major tech company wanting to discuss a potential buyout. I had spent years making Whitmore Travel a powerhouse. Now, I was making sure they were never relevant again. Samantha's message. Just as I was reviewing contracts, my phone buzzed, a message from Samantha. I stared at her name on the screen, my jaw tightening. I hadn't heard from her since that night at the boardroom, since I had watched her world fall apart. I should have ignored it, but curiosity won. I opened the message. "Noah, can we talk?" Talk. After everything, after she stood by Gregory while they erased me, after she sat in silence while another man took my place. I leaned back in my chair, gripping my phone. For a moment, I considered responding, asking why she had done it, why she had thrown me away so easily if she had ever truly loved me. But then I realized something. I didn't care anymore. Samantha was part of my past. I had no interest in giving her space in my future. I deleted the message, then I blocked her number, and just like that, she was gone. The death of Whitmore Travel. By noon, my phone was ringing non-stop. Investors, journalists, CEOs, everyone wanted a piece of me, but I was only interested in one call, a contact at a major travel conglomerate, one of Whitmore Travel's biggest competitors. "Let's make it official," I told him. Buy out their remaining assets. Take whatever's left. A pause, then a laugh. You really want them dead, don't you? I smiled. They already are. An hour later, the news hit the markets. Whitmore Travel's competitors officially absorbed their remaining contracts. Gregory's empire, gone. The Whitmore name, a relic of the past. I leaned back in my chair, watching the news unfold. This was the final nail in the coffin. The Whitmore family had spent years believing they were untouchable. Today, they learned the truth. No one is untouchable, especially not when they cross the wrong man. The taste of victory. That night, I sat in my office, staring out over the city. Whitmore Travel was finished. Samantha was out of my life. Gregory had been humiliated beyond repair. And Daniel King? He had vanished. Last I heard, he had fled the company as soon as things started collapsing, leaving Gregory to deal with the mess alone. Typical. A man who never built anything never knows how to fight for it. I poured myself a drink, the amber liquid glowing under the office lights. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not in the shadows, not waiting for recognition, but at the top. And the best part? I did it without them. Gregory had told me once that numbers on a screen don't build an empire. He was right. A man does. And tonight, I raised my glass to the man who never needed them. To the man who walked away from betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak, and built something even greater. To me. Noah Carter was dead, and in his place, the real king had finally risen. The next morning, I woke to absolute silence. No more stress, no more Whitmore Travel weighing me down, no more waiting for recognition that would never come. I took a deep breath, staring at the ceiling for a moment before swinging my legs out of bed. I stretched, my muscles sore from the tension that had lived inside me for far too long. Today was different. Today I didn't wake up feeling like I had something to prove. I had already proved it. The empire I built for them, gone. The empire I was now building for myself, thriving. And now, the people who betrayed me were exactly where they deserved to be, scrambling in the ruins of their greed. I grabbed my phone and checked my emails, scrolling through the endless flood of messages, investor proposals, acquisition offers, media interview requests. I smirked as I sipped my morning coffee, taking my time for once. The world was waiting on me. But then, as I was about to put my phone down, something caught my eye, a new message from Gregory Whitmore. I exhaled, shaking my head. This should be good. I tapped it open. Subject, let's talk Noah. We need to discuss this. There has to be a way to fix what happened. I admit I underestimated you, but we can still work something out. Let's be reasonable. Name your terms. Gregory Whitmore. I leaned back, staring at the words on the screen. Name my terms. He really thought this was a negotiation. I chuckled, setting my phone down. Gregory still didn't get it. This wasn't about making a deal anymore. This wasn't about money, contracts, or power plays. It was about watching him crumble, and he was almost there. Gregory's fall from grace. By noon, the news had officially turned against him. I sat in my penthouse office, watching the latest business report on the flat screen. Whitmore Travel faces unrecoverable losses. Gregory Whitmore fails to retain investors amidst collapse. From billion-dollar empire to ruins, what's next for the Whitmore family? A few days ago, Gregory was at the top of the world, a man everyone in the industry feared. Now, he was a joke. I leaned forward, adjusting my cufflinks, and I was about to bury him completely. The boardroom showdown. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Gregory walked into my office. The man who once treated me like I was a disposable tool now sat across from me, his face drained of arrogance. I had expected him to be angry. I had expected more of that classic Whitmore bravado. Instead, he looked exhausted. For the first time since I had met him, Gregory Whitmore looked old. Let's cut to it, I said, leaning back. You want me to save you. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I want to talk about a partnership, something that benefits both of us. I laughed, actually laughed. Gregory tensed. You've made your point, Noah. You won. But business is business. You know what I'm offering you. I tilted my head. Do I? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Whitmore Travel still has value, a name, a legacy. I scoffed. Greg, the only thing left of Whitmore Travel is a burned-out husk. His eyes darkened. You don't want to work with me? Fine. But do you really want the world to see you as a man who burns bridges instead of building them? I smirked. I think the world is watching a man who finally took back what was his. Gregory clenched his jaw. You're making a mistake. No. I stood, adjusting my suit jacket. You made the mistake when you thought I was just a tech guy. I walked to the door and opened it. Now get out of my office. He hesitated for a second, like he wanted to say something else, but then he stood, his pride keeping him from begging any further. Good, because I wouldn't have given him a damn thing. The final nail in the coffin. After Gregory left, I got back to work. Whitmore Travel was bleeding out. All I had to do was finish the job. I pulled up my contacts list and made one final call. A well-connected friend in the media, someone who owed me a favor. I kept it simple. "Sinai, I have a story for you." By 8 o'clock in the evening, the headlines had shifted again. Former Whitmore CEO seeks partnership with ex-son-in-law and gets rejected. The entire industry knew now. Gregory was done. Whitmore Travel would never recover. And I was just getting started. The ghost of Samantha. Just as I was about to shut my laptop for the night, I saw another message. This time, it wasn't from Gregory. It was from Samantha. I exhaled, debating whether I should even open it. Then curiosity got the best of me. "Noah, I don't even know where to start. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I need you to know that I never wanted this. Not like this. Can we talk?" "Talk." I stared at the screen, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. I should have felt satisfaction seeing her regret. I should have been smug. But instead, I just felt nothing. Samantha had made her bed, and now she was realizing how cold it was without me in it. I didn't even hesitate this time. I deleted the message. No response, no closure, because some people don't deserve it. And Samantha Whitmore was one of them. The last laugh. As I leaned back in my chair, sipping my whiskey, I realized something. For years, I thought revenge was about getting back what was taken from me, but it wasn't. Revenge was about walking away completely untouched while the people who wronged me burned. And tonight, the Whitmore family was nothing but ash. I smiled to myself, staring out over the city. I didn't need them. I never did. And now, the world finally knew it. The city lights stretched before me, twinkling like scattered diamonds in the night. I sat in my penthouse office, the weight of the day pressing into my shoulders. But for the first time in years, it wasn't the weight of failure, it was the weight of victory. Whitmore Travel was officially finished. Gregory, a relic of the past. Daniel, nowhere to be found. Samantha, regretting every choice she made. I should have been celebrating, but instead I felt something unexpected. Relief, not emptiness. For so long I had lived for this moment. I had breathed revenge, planned every move with surgical precision. And now I had nothing left to fight for. I swirled the amber liquid in my glass, watching it catch the dim light of my office. Was this it? Was this all revenge was? The funeral of an empire? The next morning, the final Whitmore Travel press release went out. I sat back, sipping my coffee as the headlines rolled in. Whitmore Travel files for bankruptcy. CEO Gregory Whitmore steps down. Once a $400 million giant, Whitmore Travel becomes industry's biggest failure. Carter Global Solutions takes over market as former tech lead rises to power. That last one made me smile. Carter Global Solutions. My company, my name, my legacy. Whitmore Travel wasn't dying, it was dead. No investors, no clients, no future. Gregory had tried to play king. Now he was nothing more than a footnote in a business school case study on corporate greed. I clicked off the news and checked my emails. More offers, more deals, more meetings. I had won. And yet, why did I still feel like something was missing? The past comes knocking. At exactly 11 o'clock in the morning, my secretary buzzed my office. "Sir, someone is here to see you." I frowned. "Who?" A hesitation then, "It's Samantha." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Samantha. I hadn't seen her since I walked out of that boardroom, since she sat there in silence while her father erased me from my own success. And now she was here. I should have told my secretary to send her away. I should have ignored her completely. But instead, I said, "Let her in." The door opened, and there she was, Samantha Whitmore. Except she wasn't Samantha Whitmore anymore. She looked hollow. The confident, powerful woman who once stood beside me was now a shadow of herself. Her eyes were tired, her face pale, and for the first time ever, she looked lost. I didn't stand. I didn't offer her a seat. I just stared. "What do you want, Samantha?" My voice was cold, distant. She swallowed hard, stepping forward. "Noah, please. Please," I repeated, tilting my head. "Isn't that what I said the night your father betrayed me, and you sat there and said nothing?" She winced. "I made a mistake." I let out a short laugh. "No, you made a choice." Silence filled the room. She wrung her hands, looking down. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "You're right," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I won't." Her breath hitched, but I didn't care. I'd given her everything, and she had given me nothing but betrayal. The truth comes out. "Why are you here, Samantha?" I finally asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "I was wrong about Daniel." I smirked. "Of course. I had wondered where Daniel had disappeared to after the company collapsed. I hadn't heard his name in days, but I already knew. He left you, didn't he? I said, watching her carefully. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't respond. That was all the answer I needed. Of course Daniel left. Daniel was a coward. The moment things went south, he ran. He wasn't like me. He had never built anything. He had never fought for anything. He was just a man who took advantage of an opportunity, and when the opportunity was gone, so was he. Samantha looked broken, but I felt nothing. Noah, she whispered, stepping closer. I don't expect us to go back to what we were. I know that's impossible, but I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I stared at her, and then I did something I hadn't expected. I laughed, loud, sharp, genuine. Because the truth was, I finally saw it. Samantha didn't love me. She loved power. She loved success. She loved being with the man who was winning. And when she thought Daniel was that man, she walked away without a second thought. And now she was back because I was winning again. Not because of love, because of survival. And I was never going to be her safety net again. I stood, adjusting my suit. Samantha, let me make this clear. She looked up, hopeful, desperate. I leaned in, my voice low. You mean nothing to me. Her breath caught. I smiled. Not anymore. She opened her mouth, but I had already turned away. This conversation is over, I said. Close the door on your way out. And just like that, she was gone. The final goodbye. I sat back down, exhaling slowly. That was it. The final piece of my past, gone. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. No more Whitmores, no more betrayals, no more ghosts of what could have been. I wasn't the man they left behind anymore. I was the man who walked away first. And as I looked out over my empire, Carter Global Solutions, my billion-dollar future, I finally understood what real power was. It wasn't revenge. It was knowing you never needed them to begin with. I picked up my whiskey, raising the glass toward my own reflection in the window. To me, I muttered, smirking. Then I drank to the man I had finally become. The next morning, I woke up with a clear mind. No lingering emotions, no ghosts from my past clawing for my attention. I was done. Samantha had walked out of my life for good, and Gregory Whitmore's empire was nothing more than a cautionary tale. Everything that needed to be said had been said. Now it was time to build. I showered, dressed in a dark gray suit, and stepped into my office, the skyline of the city stretching before me. The world was mine now, not because I stole it, but because I earned it, and I wasn't going to waste another second looking back. The rise of Carter Global Solutions. By 9 o'clock in the morning, my office was buzzing with energy. Carter Global Solutions wasn't just an alternative to Whitmore Travel. It was the future. The moment Whitmore Travel collapsed, the industry turned to me. Corporate clients wanted my software, the same one that built Whitmore's empire. Major investors wanted in. The media wanted my story. I had meetings lined up with some of the most powerful business leaders in the world. And this time, I wasn't sitting at their table as a tech guy. I was the one they wanted to impress. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through the headlines. Carter Global Solutions named fastest rising company of the year. Whitmore Travel's collapse leads to industry power shift. Ex-tech lead turned CEO Noah Carter poised to dominate the market. I smirked. Poised to dominate? I already had. The unexpected call. Just as I was about to leave for my first investor meeting, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something told me to pick up. I pressed the phone to my ear. Tinus, is Noah. A deep breath, then, Chont, Noah. It's Gregory. I froze for half a second. Then slowly, I leaned forward in my chair, gripping the phone tighter. And Gregory. I hadn't spoken to him since I watched him crumble in my office, since I handed him back his pathetic $100 bill and walked away. Now he was calling me. I didn't say a word. His voice cracked slightly, like he hated what he was about to say. And I need to see you. I smirked. Do you? For Noah. He exhaled, as if the weight of his own ego was suffocating him. Tis is serious. Tintino, I'm sure it is. I leaned back. But what I don't understand is why I should care. Silence. Then his voice dropped to something I'd never heard before, a sound I never thought Gregory Whitmore was capable of. Defeat. Because I have nothing left, he admitted. And I need your help. I raised an eyebrow. Gregory Whitmore, asking me for help. How poetic. Chew, how do I know this isn't another game? I asked. That you aren't plotting some last-ditch effort to rebuild what I destroyed? His laugh was bitter. Noah, there's nothing left to rebuild. I exhaled slowly, tapping my fingers against my desk. I had dreamed about this moment, the day when Gregory Whitmore would finally realize he wasn't untouchable. And now, he was a desperate man, grasping for anything that remained. I should have said no. I should have hung up. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, wanted to hear what he had to say. "Fine," I said. "A one meeting, but I'm choosing the place." He didn't argue. Because for the first time in his life, Gregory Whitmore wasn't in charge. The last conversation. I met Gregory at a small, nearly empty restaurant downtown. I picked the place on purpose. No press, no luxury, just two men sitting across from each other. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. The once powerful CEO was now just an old man in a wrinkled suit. He looked tired, broken, like someone had taken the foundation of his life and shattered it at his feet. I didn't stand when he sat down. I didn't offer him a handshake. I just watched. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I suppose you've been enjoying this immensely." I sipped my coffee. He gave a short, humorless chuckle. "Of course you have." A waitress approached, asking if he wanted anything. He waved her off. For a man who used to live for extravagance, Gregory Whitmore suddenly looked like he had lost his appetite for the world. Finally, he exhaled. "I need a job, Noah." I almost laughed. "Excuse me?" He clenched his jaw. "You heard me." I shook my head in amusement. "Greg, you spent years treating me like I was beneath you. You threw me away. You handed my work to another man. And I know." His voice was strained. "And I was wrong. Wrong." That was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "Tenor, why should I help you?" He hesitated, then in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Because I don't know how to start over." I studied him for a long moment. This wasn't the Gregory I once knew. That man had been arrogant, untouchable, ruthless. This man, he was just another casualty of his own greed. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt indifference. I finished my coffee, set the cup down, and met his eyes. "Oh, Greg," I said slowly, I don't think you understand." His brows furrowed. I smiled. He sighed. "I didn't just destroy your company." I leaned in, and I erased you. His lips parted slightly, his breath hitching. "You're not coming back from this," I continued. "For your name means nothing in this industry now. You have no leverage, no power, no future. And you want me to help you?" I shook my head. "I don't owe you a damn thing." Gregory swallowed hard, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for his water. He knew. This wasn't a conversation. This was a burial. I stood, grabbing my coat. Before I left, I pulled something out of my pocket, the same $100 bill he had thrown at me that night. I placed it gently on the table in front of him. "This is your actual value, Greg." Then I walked out, and I never looked back. I walked out of the restaurant, stepping into the crisp afternoon air, knowing I had just closed the final chapter of the Whitmore family. Gregory was finished, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt free, not just free from them, but free from the past. I wasn't the man begging for their approval anymore. I wasn't the fool who built an empire for another man to steal. I was the man who took everything back. I climbed into my car, shutting the door with a satisfying thud. The city stretched before me, bright and full of opportunity, a city that was now mine to conquer. I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar. Back to business. A meeting with the biggest airline in the country in an hour, a proposal with a corporate travel firm worth billions in the evening, a dinner invitation with some of the most powerful investors in the world. And unlike before, I wasn't coming to these meetings as a tech guy. I was coming as the man they needed. Because Whitmore Travel, it was dead. And Carter Global Solutions, it was just getting started, taking over the industry. By the time I arrived at my office, the energy in the building was electric. Every employee I passed knew exactly what we had accomplished. We had dismantled a legacy company, and in its place, we were building something unstoppable. I walked into my conference room, where my executive team was waiting. The moment I sat down, my CFO grinned. "Noah," he said, sliding a file toward me, "you're going to love this." I opened it, scanning the numbers. Major corporations signing exclusive contracts with us. Whitmore Travel's former clients switching to Carter Global Solutions. Our valuations skyrocketing past projections. I let out a slow breath, nodding. "It's happening faster than we thought." My chief operating officer laughed. "That's because no one wants to do business with a sinking ship." I smirked. "Exactly." "Noah," my CFO said, watching me, "we've already beaten them. What's next?" I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. "What's next?" I repeated, thinking. What was next? I had already won. I had buried Whitmore Travel, left Gregory in ruins, and shut Samantha out of my life for good. But there was one last thing I wanted. I wanted to make sure no one ever doubted my power again. I wanted to make Carter Global Solutions the biggest name in the industry. I wanted to control it all. And I knew exactly how to do it. The final power move. The next morning I made a single phone call to a private investment group that had been watching me for months. They picked up on the second ring. "Noah," the man on the other end said, "I was hoping you'd call." I smiled. "Let's talk." We negotiated for an hour. By the time I hung up, the deal was done. Carter Global Solutions was about to acquire every remaining asset Whitmore Travel had left. They thought they could survive on scraps. I was taking the scraps too. There would be nothing left of them. The last nail in the coffin. 2 days later, the announcement went public. Carter Global Solutions acquires remaining Whitmore Travel assets. The media exploded. Gregory's empire was officially mine. His name erased. His legacy non-existent. And me? I was the man who built, lost, and then took it all back with interest. By noon, my inbox was flooded with messages, but one stood out. A message from Samantha. "Noah, I saw the news. I don't know what to say." I smirked. There was nothing left to say. She had chosen to stand against me. Now she was just another spectator watching me rise. I didn't respond. I didn't even hesitate. I deleted the message. She was nothing to me now. The best revenge. That night, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, whiskey in hand, staring at the city below. The same city that once felt too big for me. The same city where I had worked tirelessly in the shadows while others took credit for my ideas. Now, I owned this city. I was the name on everyone's lips. And the best part? I never had to fight for their approval again, because now they were the ones chasing me. I smirked, raising my glass in a silent toast, not to revenge, not to bitterness, but to freedom. Because I wasn't just the man who got even. I was the man who outgrew them all. And that was the greatest victory of all. The world looked different now, not because the skyline had changed, not because the city had suddenly bent to my will, but because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I had it all: power, wealth, influence, and, more importantly, peace. Carter Global Solutions wasn't just a rising name in the industry, it was the only name that mattered now. And the Whitmores? Gone. Their empire had crumbled. Their reputation had vanished. Their last remaining assets were now under my control. There was no comeback, no redemption, just silence. And for a man like Gregory Whitmore, that silence was worse than death. The final message. It happened late at night, long after my meetings were done, long after the city had begun winding down. I was in my office, staring at the skyline, a whiskey glass in my hand, when my phone buzzed, a text message from Gregory. I raised an eyebrow, staring at the name on the screen. He still hadn't learned to give up, had he? I tapped the message open. "Noah, I don't expect you to answer, but I wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I let my ego destroy what we built. I underestimated you, and I lost." I read the words twice, waiting for the anger to come, the resentment. But it never did. Instead, I felt nothing. I had already won. Gregory had already lost. And now, he was just another man who had learned the cost of betting against me. I set my phone down without replying. Because Gregory didn't deserve a response. Some things didn't need to be said. One last ghost. A week passed. A week of expansion, of growth, of watching Carter Global Solutions take over everything the Whitmores once controlled. And then, one night, Samantha showed up. I was in the middle of a late-night meeting at the office when my secretary knocked. "Sir, there's someone here to see you." I barely looked up. "Tell him to schedule a meeting." She hesitated. "It's Samantha Whitmore." I paused. For a moment I debated telling her to throw Samantha out, to escort her from the building like a stranger. But something in me, curiosity, amusement, or maybe a desire for one final conversation, made me nod. "Send her in." Moments later the door opened, and there she was. The woman who once had my heart, the woman who had chosen greed over loyalty. She looked different now, not in the way of a woman who had moved on, but in the way of a woman who had realized she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Her designer coat was impeccable, her heels clicked softly against my office floor, but her eyes, they were haunted. "Noah," she breathed. I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully. "Samantha," she swallowed, shifting on her feet. I wasn't sure if you'd see me," I smirked. "Then why did you come?" Her lips parted, but she hesitated. And for the first time I saw it, regret. Not fake regret. Not the type of regret that comes from losing money or status, but real, genuine regret. I should have enjoyed it, but the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. She was just another part of the past now. She exhaled. "Inside, I was wrong about you." I raised an eyebrow. "I know." She let out a breathy laugh, shaking her head. "Well, of course you do." Silence stretched between us. I could see it in her face. The moment she realized there was no going back. The moment she saw that I wasn't the same man who had once loved her. And then, finally, she whispered, "Do you ever miss us?" I didn't even have to think about it. No. Her lips parted slightly. She had expected hesitation. She had expected an opening. But there was nothing left for her here. "Anoa," she said softly, stepping forward. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I needed to see you. I needed to say it." I tilted my head. "Say what?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, fragile and uncertain. And for a brief moment, I saw the woman I had once loved, not the woman who had stood beside Gregory while they humiliated me, not the woman who had chosen another man before our marriage was even over, just Samantha. And maybe, in another life, those words would have meant something. Maybe they would have mattered, but not in this one. I stood, adjusting my suit jacket. "I accept your apology," I said simply. A flicker of something crossed her face, hope, relief. But then I added, "But that doesn't change anything." Her breath caught. "Anoa, we're done, Samantha." My voice was firm, final. "You made your choice and I made mine." She stared at me for a long moment, then finally she nodded. "Once I understand," she whispered. And with that, she turned and walked away. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. She was already gone from my life. The man who moved on. I stood there for a moment after she left, letting the silence settle around me. Then, slowly, I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, staring at the city I now owned. For so long, I had thought revenge was the ultimate goal, that if I could just make them suffer the way they made me suffer, I would finally feel satisfied. But now I realized that revenge was just a step. The real victory? Moving on. Because the truth was, I wasn't the man they betrayed anymore. I wasn't the man who had spent years fighting to be seen, fighting to be valued. I was beyond them now. And that was the best revenge of all. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, a smirk playing at my lips, not because I was celebrating the fall of the Whitmores, but because I was finally celebrating myself. The world was mine now, and I wasn't just ready for the future, I was already living it.